mercy, integrity, and humility is a radically different way to hold power. For hundreds of years now in Western culture, there's been a lot of talk about power and the abuse of power from political leaders or religious leaders, from the American Revolution's overthrow of the monarchy, to Marx and his utopian vision of an egalitarian, classless society, to Michel Foucault and the French postmodernist power analysis, to critical theory today and social media's, quote, speaking truth to power and calling those in power to account. Yet for all of our critique of power, which is right and necessary, since at least Nixon in the 1960s in our country, it's just been scandal after scandal after failure after failure. On the left and the right, this one is bipartisan. We can't seem to produce an ample supply of leaders to hold power well. I would offer to you that one of the primary reasons of this is because the West's way of dealing with power, and really this is global, is to take power away from the powerful and give it to the powerless, to take it away from the dominant group and give it to the marginalized group. This is good and it is right and it is fitting, but it does not go deep enough to solve the problem. The problem is this strategy, it rarely works, and frequently it makes a bad problem worse. Just do a cursory study of the last century, whether you study post-colonial theory or former Soviet bloc countries or Latin America. There are success stories that are beautiful, but they are not very common. Please don't hear what I'm saying right now as a passive-aggressive pushback on justice. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying we need to go deeper. Listen to Miroslav Volf, the Christian intellectual and Croatian professor now from Yale, who grew up under brutal oppression and violent injustice. In his masterpiece, Exclusion and Embrace, which is just staggering at every level, he writes, all too often, he can say this, I can't, but all too often they, the oppressed or injured, do not want to topple the dominant order. They demand the reshuffling of cards, not another game. They do not blame the game, only the stronger hand of the adversary. Victims need to repent of the fact that all too often they mimic the behavior of the oppressors, let themselves be shaped in the mere image of the enemy. I just want you to consider, I know that's provocative language, I just want you to consider his metaphor. That Jesus is not giving us a new hand. Imagine a card game. He's not saying, let's reshuffle the deck and start over and give everybody the same number of cards. He's saying, let's throw the game out altogether. The way to hold power for Jesus is not just to take it away from one and give it to another, though there is a time and a place for that I am in full support of. But it's to hold power with mercy, integrity, and humility. You see, the problem is not power. Read Genesis chapter 3. We were made to hold power. To rule is the word used in Hebrew. As the image of God, that's a way of saying as kings and queens. The problem isn't even that some people have more power than others. Some of that is a necessary evil until Jesus' return. The problem is the abuse of power. People much smarter than I, which is not that hard, argue that the maxim power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely is actually not true, and argue that power reveals what's inside a person, and it amplifies its influence for better or for worse. Don't believe me? Watch, what's it called? Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We watch that as a family. That's what the entire thing is about right there. Give a good person power, and they will steward it for good on behalf of the powerless. Give an evil person power, they will use and abuse it to gain more power and make the weak pay the bill. What we need is people of mercy, integrity, and humility who give their power away. We need people who follow the way of Jesus. How do we become these types of people? Let me give you 3 simple practices in a minute or two from the way of Jesus. To grow in mercy, the practice of listening. When we listen to another and we really hear them, hear their pain, hear their story, how they became who they are, how they got to where they are, we cross the chasm of difference that is the cause of so much of our judgment of others. It's very hard to judge someone you understand. And we do this through listening to another. I would argue that the first and primary skill of learning to live in community is learning to really listen at a soul level to another. To grow in integrity, the practice of secrecy. This is all over the life of Jesus. If you're new to it, it's a very simple practice. You just do something good. It can be major, it can be minor. It can be a glass of cold water. It can be tiny for God, for another, whoever, and you just don't tell a soul. You don't post it on Instagram, not even on Instagram story where it goes away after a while. You don't just kind of slip it into a conversation. Oh, when I was, serving the poor a few days ago or whatever. You just do it for an audience of one, or you do it for somebody that will not even thank you or have gratitude. And you just let that work integrity into the fabric of your being. Because integrity, much of it's about doing the right thing for the right reasons. A lot of it's about motivation, not just behavioral management. 3, to grow in humility is the practice of service. Nothing will humble you like actually following what you say you believe and acting like a servant. Because then when people treat you like a servant, you're like, hey, oh, maybe my service was just a performance and not actually the desire of my heart. When you serve, the ultimate expression of love, because it is self-giving, often without getting anything in return, the reward for serving well is serving well. And is becoming a man or a woman who is a servant, like Jesus, who, quote, made himself a servant in Philippians 2. Listening, secrecy, service.